Do you want to talk about vaccine shit?
You talk about whatever the fuck you want
Okay.
to talk about. This is your
All right, man.
moment. This is your time. Okay.
Oh god. All right. So just to be
Careful.
clear, all right, I'm not a fucking anti-vaxxer.
He is an
okay?
anti-vaxxer. All the
I'm
anti-vaxxers
not.
start with I'm not an
Okay.
anti-vaxxer.
I'm a vaccinated, responsible citizen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like I'm against the mandates. Like I don't see why people should be forced. And everybody did like the seatbelt meme, and they were like, I think even you said this in one of your streams. You're like, if we were trying to pass like seatbelt laws right now, it'd be fucking impossible. The people that are out there, but like, if I'm wearing my seatbelt, like, and you're not, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're terrified of like dying in a car accident, put your fucking seatbelt on. And like, yeah, I get it. It's not going to work every time, but like,
I think that the
So are we-
issue is that basically the sooner more people get vaccinated, the sooner we all kind of like move on through everything. And if people aren't getting vaccinated, then we're having to wait for people getting infected and like shit like that, which is just frustrating. So if people feel like we can move that process along quicker, that's like where people's drive comes from to like have some of these vaccine mandates.
okay. And then like, because I had said something like similar, like I talked to Vosh about it a little bit, and he was like, it's more of like the difference in this virus and the way it evolves or something. And I don't pretend to be like a fucking expert on this shit. I don't know shit about it. Okay, I just got my vaccine because I don't want to fucking like spread it to other people. But I did already have the virus too. Like I tested positive, so I know I had like the immunity or whatever, and I know that the natural immunity is like stronger or whatever. So I wasn't necessarily going to get the vaccine, but like I work in healthcare, and so we always get the newest vaccines anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
What do you do in healthcare?
I work in a nursing home.
Gotcha. Are you like a CNA or?
No, I actually do have my CMA, but that's not what I'm doing there. I actually cook.
Okay.
So I make breakfast and lunch for like fucking like 1,000 people every day. which is
Oh
pretty fun.
damn, this is a big home.
Yeah, huge.
Gotcha. Well, cool.
Yeah, so
Okay, well, let's like break it down a little bit. Are you okay with the government not mandating it, but like private companies doing it, or do you think even private companies should be
yeah,
able to
I
do it?
think private companies, and I think anything in healthcare and military is fine because they do that anyways. Like my brothers are all in like military, and my mom was in like I come from a big military family, so like I understand it for the military. Like you don't want a bunch of people like. You know, you gotta have mix up different people all across the fucking nation and then all across the world. Like they have to have their vaccines, like so they're not like fucking spreading random viruses around and like making super viruses strains and shit. But and then healthcare makes sense because it's more for like the protection. As I understand, it's more for the protection of the employees than it is anything because you're coming in contact with so many different like strains and viruses and stuff all the time.
Sure. Okay.
But then other than that, I feel like it should be up to the businesses to decide. And if every business in the country just decided they want to mandate a vaccine, then so be it. I just feel
I
like
think so. My understanding is I think that's where we're at right now. It's like businesses can mandate it if they want to. Right.
but if they don't, they get fined, right?
Did that actually pass? Was that the case?
I don't know if it passed. I know that was being talked about at one point.
Fuck, I don't actually remember. I thought that was like an idea that was floated that businesses of a certain. Oh, that's the OSHA requirement. It didn't. Wait, we got two different answers in chat.
I'm googling it right now. It looks like it's something like 70,000 to 700,000 fine for not vaccinating your people. That was as of late September. I'm still looking.
And that's like per business, per like if you have like 100 people or
Gotcha.
more.
So
or
I think
something.
if that's the one that did go through, then it's you have to either get vaccinated or you have to do like the weekly tests or whatever or something, right?
Yeah. Yes, you have to do like because we still have to do weekly testing at our place, and they actually just went around. They were gonna let the people stay that had like the excuses or whatever, like being excused from getting the vaccine or whatever you call it. Shit, I forgot the name of it, but like you can put in it's either a medical waiver or like a religious or something like that. And then they just were like, no, fuck that, because there was like way too many across all the different, because the company that owns the nursing home owns like several across the country. And between all of the different locations, they were just like, no, there's way too many people
That are trying to
unvaccinated.
do-
So they,
oh.
yeah, so they're just gonna fire everybody. And yeah, so we just introduced like all kinds of like bonuses and sign-on bonuses and stuff to get new employees to replace them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it might come down fundamentally to this idea of like whether or not you believe you have some type of obligation or buy-in to society. I think you kind of do. I think that like if you live in a society, you kind of owe that society something since it gives you stuff as well. And I think one of those things is probably like taking minimum level precautions to not transmit deadly diseases to people or be like a incubator for deadly diseases. So insofar as that goes, I think it's okay to like say like, okay, yep, like there are some vaccines that you have to get. You know.
I feel like there also should have been some kind of like the antigen test or something for people who had the virus. And then, like after a couple months, they can go back and get tested again to make sure that it's not waning or whatever the fuck.
I think that might be a thing that could happen. If there was an argument against it that I would be sympathetic towards, it's that if we were to have those tests, I wonder how many people would try to get intentionally infected just so that they would never have to get the... I don't know if I would encourage that behavior or not.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it
It would
would
be like having chickenpox parties, but for COVID-19.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I am sympathetic towards, like, if you have been infected one time and, like, I mean, you have a lot of immunity. Like, why? Yeah. I can understand, like, the frustration from those types of people, but...
Yeah, I don't know, like, and I haven't really talked about it a lot because I'm like, I don't want to like encourage people to not get vaccinated because, like, one of the reasons, like, because I was like, at some point I was talking about it like super early on, whenever nobody like knew shit about anything, and this because the vaccines are a little different, like the Moderna and everything, but the way I see it, I think probably it is going to end up being like a much better vaccine. Kind of like, I don't know, if you could imagine like you're like a football team or some shit, and like all you ever did was scrimmage. You never like played your offense against your own defense, and then all of a sudden like somebody was like, hey, we should play our offense against our defense in practice instead of always scrimmaging against people. And you're like, what the fuck? When it's happening, you're like, oh, this is crazy, this is a crazy idea, but in the future we're probably gonna be like, all right, this is pretty cool.
Okay.
But I don't know, man. It just seemed like at first I was really spooked by it, and nobody knew anything about it. And there's like, I think it was partly it was an issue that they publicized it so much that I remember one video that really scared the shit out of me was like the one where the lady, I was actually watching it live, that news conference where they're like, the nurse is like getting vaccinated or whatever, and then she gets a shot, and then like she passes out. Like so they're like, this is supposed to be like the thing that's like encouraging everybody to get vaccinated. They were talking, and then she gets vaccinated, and then they talk some more, they pan to other people, and then she comes back to talk again or something, and she like ends up passing out or some shit.
Really?
And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, it was like super fucking crazy. Like this was like on NBC or CBC or some shit too. And so then I was like pretty spooked about it. But then I wasn't like against it wholly, but like I had been taught like just venting to my wife and shit. And then I guess what really like spooked me into like not talking about it was because her grandpa had started to talk about like getting it, and her grandpa's like fucking like 80, like definitely in the like the whatever you call it. He's at risk.
Okay.
And she was like wanting me to talk to him, like, and tell him what I was like, like my thoughts on the vaccine. I was like, what the fuck? Like, no, I don't. I wouldn't want to be responsible for that. Like, he's in the risk group and he needs to get it. Like, it's like, I still think it's spooky, but like, obviously we're not at risk. He's 80 years old. Like, if
There
he
is, like,
fucking gets it, he could fucking die. Like,
There is like a really weird thing that some people get when it comes to, I know there's something when it comes to seeing blood, and there's also something when it comes to getting shots where it will like make people faint. And not like wussy people, but like really big, like manly men, like there's like, it's just like a weird thing. I don't know what it is or what it's called, but I've heard stories like this before of like, there are some people that just, when they get a shot or when they see blood, they just like literally faint. I don't know what it is or why, but I don't know. Or some people have like a lot of trouble, like seeing their own blood is apparently really, really hard for some people. Like if you get like a blood draw and you watch the blood come out, like it really fucks with some people's heads, like hardcore. I don't know why. But.
Yeah. Well, there's something, and this is what I was thinking about this today, is I was listening to this guy. There's this guy I listen to on YouTube. He's like a doctor, and he just does like objective like updates on the data that's coming out about like the vaccine or whatever. And he was talking about how important it is to like do the I forget the name of it. You're supposed to do something before you get the vaccine to make sure that the vaccine goes into the muscle tissue and not into the vein.
Well,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's something called aspiration where you can
that's
aspirate the needle.
It, yeah.
But I don't think that that's recommended when you're doing intramuscular injections, because one, it can be hard to aspirate properly such that you don't even know if you're doing it effectively, and two, the process of aspirating it might cause you to move the needle more, which will make you hit a vein, which is what you're trying to avoid in the first place. This is going by a few Reddit comments I read from people that said one was a nurse and one was a physician, so I don't know how accurate that is, but yeah, I don't know like what the standard operating procedure is for should you be aspirating needles doing intramuscular injections. I'm not sure.
Well, he had on like he talked to a guy who that's his field, is like viral or he like helps create the micro particles or whatever for like viruses and for other stuff like that. He works with the micro particles, and like he was saying that it is important that they are supposed to be aspirating, but that like the pharmaceutical companies like don't want to be the one to, they basically delegate that to whoever's administering the vaccination, because then they can't be held liable or whatever. But I know that that can be something too. Like there are really short-term side effects that can happen if the vaccine isn't administered properly, as well as like a more longer term. But so I don't know, maybe that was the case for maybe that particular person. But then that could be an issue, is why some people are seeing like adverse reactions from the virus.
Oh, yeah. So this was something that was floated. I don't think we know the answer to this yet, but yeah, you're talking about. So one of the proposed mechanisms for why acute myocarditis might develop in somebody is if you hit a vein and you do the injection. Ideally, I think what you want is an intramuscular injection, gets all of those mRNA little dudes injected into your cells like around that area, and then they get taken up by your immune system and everything. And that's good. But if you hit a vein, then those mRNA guys go floating all throughout your body, and it's possible, I think, that those ACE2 receptors can be in vessels in your heart, which if it gets picked up by them there, that could lead to inflammation. So I think it was suggested that, yeah, it's possible, maybe, that the reason why we see myocarditis develop in some people is because the injections are missing the muscle and they're hitting a vein, and the inflammation has been caused in the heart because of that. But that hasn't been proven or like studied well. I think that was like a proposed mechanism, and I think they were able to demonstrate that that could happen, but we don't know 100% if that is the case. But yeah.
Yeah, I sent you the video of the two guys like talking that I was thinking about. So you can watch it like later or something. But I think they put like links to other sources in his video. And this guy's not like, this isn't like that other guy from like the Dark Horse guy, the fucking Weinstein guy. It's not like that. He gives like objective updates and like what's going on.
Yeah, I've heard this guy before. Yeah. So there's a guy in my chat, this Dr. Avi guy, who linked something else. Apparently, aspirations are not recommended right now for intramuscular injections into the deltoid, which is what you inject into for, I think, most intramuscular injections. Damn,
that's crazy, because this guy that he talks to basically says like the exact opposite, I think.
I'm curious. Okay, I'm gonna listen. I want to hear what he says. Do you know what time he brings this up, the aspiration thing?
I can tab through it real quick and see.
When I trained as a nurse, it couldn't have been made more clear the importance of why you must aspirate when administering an intramuscular injection. I'm shocked that the guidelines now state it's not necessary. Something else that's really shitty, but is a case too, is sometimes old people suck. Old people can have
get right into it.
Okay, yeah, I'll start reading this. Old people can have really outdated information, even when it comes to things like drug prescription sometimes, and they'll get very stuck in their ways. And even when new research comes out, it's like, hey, we shouldn't do this anymore. Especially because, like, I think as a physician, you don't. I'm generalizing hardcore right now, okay? But when you work in a hospital setting, in a clinical setting, I think you develop a lot of like habits and tendencies based on like what has worked for prior patients. You get that working knowledge built up on your own. Now, if you're a really good doctor, you should be like supplementing that with data and research and everything as well. But I think a lot of people just kind of develop this working habit and vocabulary that they use, and then they can be a little bit resistant to change sometimes in terms of like picking up like new things. I've heard this complaint pretty commonly before. I'm going to listen to this for a minute though. Hold on.
Well, today we're talking to Dr. Peter Gaillard, who is in, where are you actually at the moment, Peter?
I'm based in Leiden, the Netherlands.
Okay, lovely, yeah. Now, we've been talking about this idea of giving inadvertent intravascular administration during vaccination, and you're I think it could be said, a pretty serious scientist who knows a bit about this. So what is the conclusion about aspiration that we could use to get people interested in this video? What do we need to get across? What's been done right? What's been done wrong?
Yeah, I think the main issue is that you don't want these particles, either the adenoviral or the micro or the mRNA particles, into your bloodstream. You should check for that. And you don't want to have them in the bloodstream. You want to have them in the muscle where you inject them.
Yeah. So the way this is being done at the moment, vaccinators are sticking the needle in, but they're not drawing back to make sure they're not in the blood system. Yeah. I mean, is that possible? Could that happen? If you put a needle into a deltoid muscle, could it end up in a vessel by mistake?
On very few occasions, it can happen, and you can even just hit a blood vessel on the way in or out so that you get some bleeding. That happens a lot more often. And basically, you don't want to have the particles hit the bloodstream or get deeper into the body. That's not where they are intended.
Yes. So I can understand that if the very tip of the needle ended up in a blood vessel, you could inject into the blood. But lots of people have asked me that after the injection, they've had some blood on the injection site. Does that mean they've damaged a blood vessel?
It has to, yeah. I don't think there can be any blood coming out without a punctured blood vessel. Doesn't mean the injection was straight into the vein, but there is an opening.
Right. So that would mean that the vaccine was in the tissues, but there was an opening in a vein, so some of the vaccine could leak into a vein.
Yeah, there could be. Yeah. We don't know how much or how damaging that is, but you cannot exclude that.
Wait, I don't know enough about human anatomy to say this. When you say blood vessels, do capillaries technically count? Because technically, anytime you cut open or into any person, even if you're only hitting like small like capillary beds, you're still going to bleed a little bit, right? But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure about that either.
Fuck, this is like the limit of my.
Because I had to get 2 flu shots and the COVID vaccine, and like there was blood on my little Band-Aid like every time. Like,
yeah, but I'm pretty sure that's normal. So like my understanding.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so you have things called oh god, I think veins return deoxygenated blood, and then you've got arteries that carry oxygenated blood.
Yeah.
But like branching off these things, you have like all of these itty bitty little tiny blood vessels that like are what carry blood out to individual things, and these things are called capillaries, right? And I think the goal when you do an intramuscular injection is to like kind of like saturate these capillaries, but you don't want to hit like a vein or whatever. Is like the goal when you do these injections. But like just seeing a little bit of blood, I don't think is bad. That doesn't mean you've hit like a major artery or a major vein or something. Like I don't think that's necessarily cause for concern.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I was like, when he said that, I was like, wait, what? I've bled like every time I get a vaccine, so I don't know.
Okay, hold on.
Yep. So before we get into the detail, is there any practical application to this video? What advice would we like to give national agencies? What advice would we like to give individuals?
Yeah, I always start with the individual. I think I concluded a piece that I wrote, but you can always ask or demand basically that they check for the
absolutely,
that they didn't hit the blood vessel, because it's your own arm, it's your own body. And nowadays it's easier to ask because there's more pressure to get vaccinated, so you can get another doctor to do it or another inject it. In the earlier days it was more difficult because they would just simply say that you're back in the queue whenever you're up again, and that could be a few months later. So I think now it's easier to ask. I know a few people who did. I certainly asked for it, and the doctors are trained to do it. The nurses are trained to do it.
So what happened when you asked to get it? What happened?
Well, it was a GP and a friend.
We're just going to read this real quickly. Sorry. Administering intramuscular vaccinations is a basic nursing skill. The process of administering an intramuscular injection includes delivering small volumes of a solution deep into designated muscle tissue. Aspiration is heralded as a safety mechanism to reduce the potential injection of unwanted solutions directly into a blood vessel. However, aspiration, which was once a standard of care, is now a questionable practice within the clinical setting. Choice of injection site is relevant to avoid injuring adjacent structures such as nerves or major blood vessels while ensuring the muscle mass can absorb the medication volume being administered. The CDC primarily recommends the deltoid muscle as a site of choice for children aged 3 and above, as well as adults receiving IM vaccinations. The deltoid is considered ideal for this population because it is a well-developed muscle that is surrounded by small vessels that are unlikely to enable the administration of an injectate and consists of anatomical and marks that can be incorporated to reduce nerve injury. The IM vaccine must reach the muscle tissue site for optimal immune response to occur. In order to reach the muscle mass, the use of longer needles is recommended. Longer needles are associated with reduced pain, erythema, and edema when compared to shorter needles because they facilitate the delivery of the vaccination deeper muscle mass. I think these have to do with bleeding. Hold on.
Erythema.
Erythema is a superficial reddening of the skin, usually in patches, as a result of injury or irritation causing dilation of the blood capillaries. So it reduces pain, erythema, and edema. Edema is swelling caused by excess fluid trapped in your body's tissues. Okay. Compared to shorter needles because they facilitate the delivery of the vaccination deeper muscle mass. The Immunization Action Coalition recommends basing the selection of needle length on the prescribed route, size of the individual, and injection technique. In fact, evidence demonstrates that a 22-25 gauge needle is supported as a standard for IM injections administered to patients with a length of 1 inch for recipients weighing between 60 and 90 kg and a length of 1.5 inches for those weighing more than 90 kg. With the decision of injection site location and needle size determination developed in the science, the exact relevance of aspiration prior to injection is questionable. The practice in terms of the likelihood of protecting the patient from inadvertently injecting into a vessel given the vascular anatomy is interesting since the likelihood of blood return appears to be low. The debate among clinicians regarding the necessity of aspirating to assess for blood return prior to IM vaccine administration is also relevant because of the potential of unnecessary pain, particularly if the step is not absolutely required. The discussion is further complicated by inconsistencies in procedural manuals and guidelines regarding the recommendation of whether or not to aspirate for potential blood return. The host of varying recommendations without scientific support contributes to clinical uncertainties. Underlying these uncertainties is the need for a clear understanding of the likelihood of blood return with aspiration and therefore the real risk of inadvertently administering the vaccine intravenously. The goal of the observational study was to estimate the proportion of blood return with aspiration in adult patients. The hypothesis is that the chance of aspiration of blood with IM vaccinations is minimal, and thus the risk of intravenous administrations is unconfirmed. This is the methodology. So we do a prospective observational research study that was approved by the Institutional Review Board. Sample size was chosen to give sufficient precision for estimating the risk of blood return with aspiration. Assuming that blood return occurs in approximately 1% of aspirations, a sample of at least 300 intramuscular injections allows for the estimation of the likelihood of blood return with aspiration that is no greater than 0.6 percentage points with the sample size using the confidence interval. During a 10-month time period, a total of 318 IM vaccine administration aspirations were observed. 15 different RNs were observed providing the aspiration assessment to adult patients. The majority of patients were female. The mean age was 64.6 years old. Pneumonia vaccine was given. 101, influenza, 23 gauge needle was used. The majority of the left arm delta was used as injection site. Of the 318 aspirations, no blood return was observed. The upper limit of a 95% confidence interval for the risk of blood return is 1.0%. Have there been any other studies on aspirations?
You're asking me, I don't know.
Oh, Avi was the one that linked this.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, if I can interject real quick. Why the focus on aspirations? Just because every time I've ever had a shot, the doctors seem to avoid me flexing or trying to get it into the muscle. So
the goal of aspiration is that if they have, the idea is that if you've hit a blood vessel or something that you're not supposed to, then if you aspirate the needle, if you pull back a little bit, you'll pull some blood out and you can see, oh, this needle is not where it's supposed to be. Okay. That's the goal. All right, listen.
Oh, okay. Right.
I could explain it first, and he obviously did that.
And you're still friends?
We're still friends.
Good. So really important point. If I'm going to get a vaccine, this is into my body. I am in control of this. And if I want aspiration, I should get vaccination. Aspiration, I should get vaccination with a vaccination. There's no ambiguity about that, I don't think.
No, well, in practice there is, because there's quite some pressure put on the system. I don't know on who exactly, but it's not always welcome, if you ask.
It is, that's correct, yeah. So we believe that this idea of inadvertent intravascular administration is a potential variable causing unwanted side effects. What sort of side effects could happen if you gave this vaccine into a vein instead of into a muscle? Or potentially happen? What sort of interactions could there be in the body?
Yeah, what I know, I personally developed these small lipid particles as a scientist, as a drug developer. And what I know is that it can induce, just by having a small amount in a higher concentration in the bloodstream, you can get an infusion reaction, which is also dubbed as the allergic reactions that people can get. And now need to wait for 15 minutes. This got me actually looking at how do they inject it. That started my whole interest in this specific topic. Mm-hmm. But the first thing that can happen is an immune response and complement activation, the immune system responding to a particle. Anyone.
So if these guys are doing, why not? Okay, get better microphones. Fuck. What is? Like Jesus. What the fuck? Sorry. Okay.
Complement is activated. That's going to cause an inflammatory reaction.
This guy over here has a decent mic. Okay.
Potentially in any part of the body.
Yeah. It's a specific part of your immune system, and indeed you can get complement activators and mediators that cause cardiovascular changes, platelet activation, and that gets closer to, of course, the side effects.
So it's possible that this form of injection technique where we're not aspirating in most of Europe, the UK and the United States could be contributing towards these side effects that we know about from the mRNA vaccines, particularly the heart inflammation and the side effects we know about from the AD.
This is a systematic literature review published in 2015. To review the available evidence on aspirating when administering intramuscular injections and suggest recommendations for practice. A systematic approach to searching the literature was undertaken using identified academic databases from inception to May of 2014. 6 studies met the search criteria. Only 6. Crazy. The majority of health professionals do not aspirate for the recommended 5 to 10 seconds. Administering an injection faster without aspiration is less painful than injecting slowly and aspirating. The main influences on the decision of whether or not to aspirate are based on what health professionals are taught and the fear of injecting into a blood vessel. Conclusion. In the pediatric vaccination setting, is this only for children? Or is it, in the pediatric vaccination setting, the practice of aspirating during the administration of an intramuscular injection is unnecessary, and there is no clinical reason to suggest that these principles may not be applied when using the deltoid, ventrogluteal, and vastus lateralis sites in other settings. I'm guessing this is your butt and this is your upper back. Do you inject here? I don't actually know what this is. Let me check. Wait. This is your... Oh, this is your femoral. The vastus lateralis, also called the vastus externus, is the largest, most powerful part of the quadriceps femoris. The gluteal one is probably your booty, right? I don't know if I can search for that. Never mind. Owing to its proximity to the gluteal artery, aspiration when using the dorsogluteal site is recommended. Nurses must be supported in all settings by clear guidance which rejects traditional practice and facilitates evidence-based practice. Huh. Okay.
Virus vector vaccines, which is the thrombocytopenia. That's a scientific possibility.
Well, I don't know if it goes that deep and long. It's always concentration dose dependent and an individual if they happen to be unlucky enough to get into that sequence of events.
Yes.
I cannot say.
You should just if you're making videos, just check the mic. What is this? I actually can't understand what some of this guy's saying.
And an individual if they happen to be unlucky enough to get into that sequence of events.
Yeah, sequence of events.
I
cannot
say it's directly causative, but if it doesn't get in the bloodstream, it wouldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. So there could be other factors that we don't know about, but preventing the vaccine getting into the bloodstream would take away one potential variable.
Yes, and the first one. So I think it's the easiest one to eliminate the chance.
So what is a lipid nanoparticle or lipid particle? What are these things?
So the mRNA in these vaccines needs to be protected and stabilized because of what
The manufacturing of these LNPs, the lipid nanoparticles, these were like the really, I think these were the huge technological breakthrough, because the manufacturing of these LNPs is so unbelievably complex and so difficult to do. And then it's also one of the newer parts that people get scared of, because I think these things are like permeable into, like, they penetrate like the blood-brain barrier. So people, like, if you've got LNPs floating around in your blood, it'll like blow your brain up or some shit. That's what that one Canadian doctor was saying. What?
I think that's what some of the like being scared about it getting into your like getting intravenous was too, because if they can get into your bloodstream and then they get into your brain and they can like cause adverse side effects. Or
Sure, potentially, but I mean, like, a lot of stuff can like permeate blood-brain barrier stuff that doesn't necessarily like kill you or fuck you, but yeah. But okay, wait, closed caption.
otherwise eliminated and break down too quick to get the effect of having the protein of the coronavirus expressed. So they are formulated in lipids, in body-owned lipids. And another lipid to capture the charged mRNA, and they're regulated to keep them stable as a particle. Otherwise, they stick together and form larger clones. And that's a classic formulation for this kind of compounds. And these form in the mRNA particles in the order of, it's nanoparticles. It's really small, about 50 nanometer small.
Yeah, absolutely tiny particles, yeah.
And the virus is about 100 nanometer, at least the adenovirus.
Yeah, about 100, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Double the size, but the body just responds to that kind of size particles, because it could be a virus or another particle that enters the body, and that's
Press the O button.
Both in our immune system to respond to intruder.
Right, so it's not necessarily the chemical makeup of the particle; it's just the physical size of the particle.
Yes. So
right.
the concentration and speed that enters is the predominant trigger for the immune response.
And do you think just a small...
that, it's the composition, but that's secondary.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. Do you think just a small number of these nanoparticles getting into the circulation could be problematic, or do we need a lot of them to get into the circulation to cause problems?
There's a threshold on the number per time. So a small amount with a large concentration can trigger. A few microliters with a high concentration can trigger. If you dilute it and then inject more, that's not a problem. So you need to stay under the radar of the cascade of the immune system too. So
even if a very small amount gets into the vascular system, that could trigger this immune response.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that with my product development.
So. Yeah, this is your professional field, isn't it? Yeah. So is the other viruses, the adenovirus vector vaccines, are they particulate in nature as well?
Sorry, I didn't get.
So the adenovirus vector vaccines. They're small particles as well as the messenger RNA vaccines, are they?
Yeah, a bit bigger. They're around 100 nanometer, 120.
Okay. But that's the same size as the virus, exactly the same size as the virus.
Yeah, that's the virus size, and therefore also the body responds to it.
Yeah.
On top of that, the adenovirus have a receptor or have the coating on the outside that actually can bind to blood cells and to platelets. It's a very specific receptor that makes them activate and enter the platelets.
Right. So
I've known already for a long time.
Yeah.
There.
So the adenovirus vector vaccines, as well as the physical size that can trigger the immune response, it can be the chemical profile of the molecule that triggers the response as well. Yeah. And people have known about this for a long time?
Yeah. No, this is old knowledge that I published more than 10 years ago and repeatedly. And then people know, don't inject these in the bloodstream. That's where you can trigger all these effects. And again, that's always dose and concentration and time dependent. So.
Okay, I think I've seen enough. I'm sorry, I remembered you were here and I'm completely into research mode now. Okay, what's up?
No, I'm just.
Where were we at?
No, I was trying to. I don't even know. We were talking about the intravascular stuff and like. I guess I was bringing that up. Parts of that. Oh shit! I don't even know why the fuck I brought that up anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of this stuff was politicized so much so that it makes it really difficult. Like if something comes out like one thing that comes out like that can be like, you know, the people who really are pretty fucking crazy and like anti-vax can like cling on to that and be like, yeah, see this one thing, and like all like saying like, oh well, first Fauci said masks and now he said he said masks won't matter and then now they matter and like shit like that, you know?
Yeah, but I mean like.
Lycane's gonna get triggered because I heard you guys talking earlier about like stuff like
wait
like with
hold this. I'm going to grab my food. 1 second. Hold this one. Okay. Hold it on.
Okay.
I've unmuted. Let's go, motherfucker.
I know. I don't want to fight. Okay. I just heard what you guys were talking about earlier. I'll save it though because I know he wants to come back.
Wait. What else? What did you were saying? American Nacho?
Yeah, you're gonna trigger me.
Oh, yeah, because the shit. So I think a big problem with like all this shit with the virus has to do with the way like it was covered, and I think like what you guys were talking about earlier. the whole like fucking like calling it like fucking horse medicine and shit, like stuff like that is just such a dumb fucking thing to do, and it just helps people have mistrust in like the media outlets that are covering these things that are supposed to be bringing you like, you know, the updated like information on all this shit and like telling you the truth, and then like people can just use shit like that to just be like, yeah, well, I don't believe anything else this fucking network says, you know.
Well,
because like there was a meme that was going around right after that shit that was like, Joe Rogan suggests that you drink a liquid commonly used to cool engines or some shit like that, and then it was like Joe Rogan. Everyone should drink more water. Like,
well, right, but I don't think it's like God. Steven, if you don't want me to talk about this, I can
go get him.
We can go.
Well, like
We
I don't
love
think
talking about Lycan's daddy.
I just think it's a little disingenuous to like frame it as the same as that. The reality is that in America, the majority of people taking ivermectin right now that aren't fucking prescribed it for worms are people who are taking fucking horse medicine because their doctor wouldn't prescribe it because it's not something that's being prescribed to that shit.
I mean, how do you know that? First of all, like, you know that everybody that's taking it is
do I know
it from the fucking farm store, like, and
because most doctors aren't prescribing it because the majority of the medical community has accepted it as not an applicable treatment for whatever, and we have actually had reports about manufacturers and stores having a low supply of this shit because everyone's buying it the fuck out in ways they never were before. So I feel pretty confident saying most people taking it for COVID are taking it because they bought it over the counter at a pet shop.
And you think that CNN calling it, like, saying that Joe Rogan took horse dewormer, knowing that he didn't, like, that's okay.
Like, so here's the thing, like, I like to say it's a lie, the most I'm willing to give it is a half truth. But to say it's a lie, you have to say that CNN analyst desk did no research beyond this and was not being a fucking smart ass about it. In which case, now here's the thing. Something I want to make sure it's really clear. I think they shouldn't do that shit because of the reason you're citing. But I do put a little onus on the American people. Like, I don't like the idea of just forgetting that people are ingesting the news and saying, everyone's stupid, so you really have to be as fucking accurate as possible because no one's going to apply critical thinking. Like, how many of the people
that clearly that's the case, though. Like,
but how much of those people are that we're fighting about now, the ones that like are, you know, getting pissy about CNN saying this shit? What percentage of those people were ever open to hearing anything else anyway, against whatever Joe Rogan says?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can even fucking like quantify that. But like, I think that Joe Rogan reaches a lot of like a pretty large like liberal audience.
Huge
too.
audience.
People that aren't all like everyone that listens to Joe Rogan is not a fucking like Trump or like anti-vax crazy fucking person. And so like. That they're turning people who were probably like pro CNN like against that organization now, and making them distrust people that probably were fine with CNN. You know, there are some people that probably were like okay with all the other stuff. They're like, okay, you know, maybe they made some lies here and there, and maybe like that's okay. Like they found a way to like justify these other like instances, and now it comes to this, and they're like, okay, what the fuck? Like, there's just no reason to lie about this. And then Joe Rogan like put him on blast on his show, like. I watched the whole episode, and the whole episode they were like chilling, but the only thing that's getting spread around the internet is just a clip of that, and it makes CNN look like really shitty. And then they doubled down on it when he went back on there. Gupta like said it again, and basically like went back, like backtracked, like backpedaled on what he was talking about on Joe Rogan's show.
So I think that they shouldn't have said it for the only reason I don't think they should have said that is for what's happening. And that's Joe turning it into a bigger issue than it actually is. Because now everyone's focusing on that, and his audience is going to listen to him and say, you know what? Fuck yeah, they lied about Joe. This is bullshit. They lied. They didn't lie. They made a fucking inflammatory comment.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, like let's say you were like dating someone that was like, or like you married someone that's like 10 years younger than you, and then like CNN like runs this fucking article and was like, yeah, Lycan and his wife that he met, or his wife was, you know, 10 years old when he was 20 years old, and they met or some shit like that. And then they dated and they got married like later or something, like, and they frame it in a way that's like, sounds like you met your wife when she was 10 years old and you were fucking 20, even though like you met like well after she was like 18 or something. Like it seems like very intentional what they did.
So let's go with that. They said like and married a teenager, right? Let's say they said something like that, right?
Well,
but she was 19.
In the reference of Stephen and Melina, right? So like,
thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Well, but in all seriousness, let's say that people are like, Destiny, started dating a teenager. Homegirl was 19.
You can use my. Wait.
Sure.
First of all, she was 20. I got gaslit into thinking she was 19. She was actually 20. Okay.
Okay, but
there was a really good bait to that I did. This is kind of tangentially related. A long time ago when I was debating like JF and all of them, because everybody accused me of being pedophile, and I admitted that I think I said I tweeted out that in 2006 I had a confirmed underage relationship with an underage sexual relationship with a minor, and I got so much retweet and shit on that. But it was when I was 17. It was my first girlfriend. But so many people retweeted that and thought it was like a huge thing or whatever. It was really dumb. But
what if you guys were like friends on social media before, because you're a big social media influencer or whatever, and so this person adds you, add them back. You never send a fucking message, but then after when she's 19 or when she's 20, whatever, then you start dating, and then but someone can say, oh, and they've been friends since whenever she was 15, and they added him and they were friends, and that's true, but that doesn't mean that you guys were dating, and that's the kind of shit. It's like. It seems like a very intentional thing to make Joe Rogan look like a fucking crazy idiot.
It is, but hold on.
Here's
he is a crazy idiot because he probably had to either has a crazy fucking doctor in Austin or whoever called in the prescription, or the doctor, just I don't want to lose Joe Rogan as a fucking patient. But when the majority of the medical community is not prescribing it for that fucking reason, and Joe's getting it, that provides credence to it when he's announcing it to his public. So the more important thing is, Joe is taking this fucking crazy medicine that he shouldn't be taking, and it's fucking dumb. And now, should CNN have just fucking focused on that and not made the horse joke? Yes, and it is being proved by this conversation alone that he should have done it for that reason. Period. End of story. But to imply that it's like him saying something as stupid as Joe Rogan drinks fucking car coolant, aka water, that's not the same, because the majority of people are.
It's pretty close, because technically that's true. Water is used as an engine coolant, that's true. So you could say that every time
in the old cars,
radiator, or whatever the fuck, or.
When our vans were garbage and my carpet cleaning job, I thought you were supposed to use radiator fluid that had a higher melting point. But what we would do is, because our engines would keep overheating, we would just keep refilling the coolant with water from our water tanks in the back. But it would always burn off, so you'd have to refill it every hour or two. I didn't know there were actual cars that used water as coolant.
Did any of your teachers ever do the dihydrogen monoxide trick with you guys in school? Yeah. Okay. It feels like that to me. It's this is technically true, and you can spin it to be any kind of way you want to. I need you guys to sign this petition because there's dihydrogen monoxide in the water fountains and this and that. It's in the bathrooms. It's whatever, and then you find out dihydrogen monoxide is just water. I don't know.
The point should be here is just that it's a false claim, and there's no reason to make a false claim when you could just make a true claim and make the same point. So is it a lie? Well, it is false.
The majority of people are getting it. You say false. So hold on. When we call it false, half-truth, lie, we lose value in those statements if we're not incredibly accurate about why we call it that.
Okay, here's a question.
Black, if
I were to say that you took fucking that people are taking animal antibiotics to treat themselves for some bacterial infections, and I was talking about penicillin. Do you think that would be a lie, or what? How would you describe that statement?
That would be misleading, half-truth, whatever, because that's a fucking well-known medicine that's being taken.
This claim was worse than
there is room
this claim
for
was even straight up wrong. False.
There's room for fucking joke, because no one knew about ivermectin until people started fucking taking it from the pet shops.
No, well, wait, hold on, qualify that statement.
The majority of people, the majority of people did not know about ivermectin.
It wasn't mainstream. In the United States, that wasn't mainstream news, right? Yeah, okay,
exactly. So the average person didn't know about it. So there is room to joke about, dog, he's taking horse dewormer, because the majority of people are getting it from the fucking pet shop.
It wasn't. Wait. A couple things. It wasn't a joke, but the reason it's a false claim is because he didn't actually take horse dewormer. Ivermectin pills are not horse dewormers.
Yes,
horse dewormers come in a specific vector.
Prescription, yes, but he goes to his Twitter account and says, I was prescribed ivermectin, and by saying that, he's saying he's taking the exact same thing all the fucking crazies are taking.
It's not the exact same thing, actually. It's the same active. It's the same active ingredient.
For all intents and purposes, saying he's taking the same thing that the crazies are taking.
And that's fine, and that's fine. But the point is, when you phrase it as it's a horse dewormer, you've made a false proposition, and you open yourself up to rightfully being called a liar, at minimum being said you're making a false statement, and and now you have all this trouble to deal with. You have this whole thing to deal with because you just decided to go the extra step and make a false claim instead of a true one.
That's what I was trying to say. Like, there's definitely a valid criticism to raise against Joe Rogan and like him, like encouraging people to potentially go and do dumb shit like that. And it's the same issues that I had with CNN. Like, looking back, because I fell for a lot of the shit, to be honest. Like, I was in the Trump train for a little while, but like looking back, I'm like, there is so much valid criticism to be made against Trump and like all the failures during his administration. There wasn't a need to go the extra mile. They ran stories talking about like how he put fucking ketchup on a well-done steak when he went to like the best steakhouse in America. That was a real fucking story they ran.
So I think what's bothering me,
there's just so much better criticisms they could have levied instead of going to these like petty little attacks on people.
And I think I've been consistent in that I wish they hadn't made this. There were better things to go after. It was inaccurate, and we're obviously dealing with the fallout. We've lesson hopefully learned by CNN. No fucking memeing, because, whatever, it turns into this. And, maybe CNN shouldn't be fucking memeing because it's one of the few news organizations.
They weren't memeing. Why do you mean they were memeing? Why do you keep saying they were memeing? They weren't memeing. It was an attempt to mislead, to make the medicine seem less.
You said yourself you don't know if on the back end they were aware or not, and whether or not.
I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's not relevant. That is an attempt to make. You're trying to damage, right, the appearance of this medication. Like,
yes, it was the lazy way to do it by calling it horse dewormer instead of saying Joe Rogan is taking medicine that has not been proven or shown in any way, shape, or form and is often cited by wrongfully read studies to have any effect on COVID. Look at this dumbass. Yes,
can I ask a question real quick? Hold on 1 second. So the question here is on percentages. So before COVID, what percentage of usage of ivermectin was for animals, right? Because I don't think any of us would have an issue if the cure for COVID or something like that was aspirin, and everyone's saying, Joe Rogan is taking literal headache medicine. So the question comes down to is what percentage?
Well, it's weird. It's weird to talk about percentages because if I had to guess, total bullshit, by the way, my guess is that the percentage of almost every single medication on Earth is going to be disproportionately in favor of animals, just because there's so many more animals than humans. That'd be my guess. Like, there's probably way more animals that have used like antibiotics than humans, because don't we have like so many animals per human? Like, so that's probably always going to be the case.
Well, at one point in time, vitamin B12 was mostly given to animals.
I think we can certainly make that a case, but if this is a prescription drug that no one had really heard of before, and the only usage for the most part was towards animals, I don't think it's that crazy to do that. Again, just on the same thing of saying that if he was saying he took aspirin, if CNN was saying, and he's taking a headache drug, and then you get a bunch of people like, it's not just a headache drug, it's actually good for lowering your risk of heartaches, or whatever.
So Dan, can I just respond to that? So it's actually not the case that it's ivermectin. Certainly it's more known now, I'll grant that, but it's not the case that it was this like arcane medicine before, even the United States.
I'm not saying, I'm asking what the majority usage before was.
Oh, but okay, but if that's your standard, if your standard is majority usage, then you're going to start.
Let's say vast majority. Like so let's say 90%. I would put it that way. Yeah.
At one point in time, you could. It wasn't.
Okay, we're not talking about one point in time. We're talking about now.
Okay, in 2005. Okay, but I'm sure there are plenty of things that we can make the same case for in terms of pharmaceuticals for animals.
Cocaine was used as a pharmaceutical back in the day, but no one's arguing here that that's not the case for it now.
I'm just not understanding the point here. Like, what?
Okay,
let's say
I don't know how it can be so difficult. Like, there's a lot of uses for different products, but if the majority use that everyone understood, for the most part, is into a single bucket, I don't think it's unreasonable for people to classify as that. Now, I can come up with more examples. I'm just using the aspirin one.
The problem is that what is the goal of, what is the utility of that classification? If it was a conversation among physicians, that would be one thing. But when you're having a conversation to the public, you're not calling it a horse dewormer because that might be what you believe is the most accurate way to classify and address the drug. You're addressing it that way to make it sound ridiculous and foolish and stupid, and like everybody taking it.
Right.
No, but it's not stupid because it's a horse dewormer. It's stupid because the antiviral properties haven't been proven in actual patients. Not because it's a horse dewormer.
Yeah, no, wait, we're right there. We're right there on my fucking thought. So yes, you're right. But the majority of people taking it for COVID are taking it from fucking pet stores as a horse dewormer. So what is wrong with lumping him in that way when you're telling him he's stupid?
Yeah, but you could add.
I'll tell you the problem.
That could be a separate criticism. Like if they really wanted to do a special about this, if they really wanted to be like surgical, they can address the issues that they have with Joe Rogan using this and then promoting it that way, and then bring up the fact that like all these people are like buying out like farm supply stores. You don't have to say that he's taking fucking like.
So if the person arguing that made the horse dewormer comment, and someone on the other side of the panel said, right, well, to be fair, it's not horse dewormer specifically, but the majority of people in the country are taking horse dewormer. But the point is that Joe Rogan's dumb for taking it, and the other panel said, yes, it is.
No, but now you sound dumb because you started with a lie. You started with a lie.
Okay, hold on. This is much easier. It's even a horse drug. Okay, if the cure was ketamine, would we all be upset if they were saying he's taking a fucking horse tranquilizer?
Someone brought this up in chat. Like, again, ketamine has uses in fucking humans.
Yeah, exactly.
So does ivermectin.
Well, yes, but again...
Well, wait, what if somebody went to do ketamine treatments for, like, depression or something, and you're like...
People do ketamine regularly.
Yeah, I know, but let's say you do that, but then somebody says, like, oh, you're gonna go take a party drug to cure your mental illness? Good job, dude. Like,
ketamine is well known by people. It is already well known, so there's no real room for fucking making the joke Joe Rogan's taking fucking horse tranquilizer. There's no room for that because we all know about it. So it's like, actually ketamine's like used for other fucking things, right? There's no room for that joke. So you lose all ability to give any charity to anyone saying that fucking thing. And then you can say, yeah, you're trying to mislabel him in a fucking super negative way with no real good reason behind it. But with the horse tranquilizer thing, it's like only idiots are taking this because it's not proven to do anything with COVID. Most people are getting it from a fucking pet store. There's room to make that fucking comment.
By the way, I would just add that I'm actually very skeptical. The majority of ivermectin does go to animals. It's used maybe in the United States it might, but I'm not even sure of.
Right, and in my comments on Reddit, that's exactly what I said.
I don't think that's true. And also, by the way, I'll just add a couple of things. So number one, there actually is an indication to treat COVID patients with ivermectin, and that is if they're from a region that has strongyloides, and if you're going to give steroids as part of the COVID treatment. The reason for that is because if you do that, then the strongyloides goes crazy, takes over because you gave steroids, your immune system that fights parasitic infections can't work as well anymore. And then you actually need to kill off that parasite in order, or else the patient will get disseminated strongyloides inside. So the point is that here's the ultimate point. The point is that ultimately this boils down to the same thing. I don't understand how anyone can get past this. It's a false claim. And you could make a joke without... And I don't even know if it was a joke. It didn't read like that to me.
It wasn't a joke.
Even if it was.
It wasn't a joke, no.
It was meant to make... It was meant to ridicule. That was the point.
We have some time before the attack.
Yeah. And so the point is if your goal is to discredit someone and ridicule them, and you are doing that by relying on a false claim, you... Not only will that backfire on you, but you go against your goal because if he calls out that false claim, like that's going to have the opposite. He's going to be vindicated.
And not only that, but like the timing is really shitty too, right? Because we already have like a large swath of the country that's like CNN is fake, like fake news.
Agreed.
Like
yes, I agree.
It's like the cherry on top. Like it's an easy way for people to just like put the nail in the coffin and be like, yeah, fuck CNN forever.
What bothers me is two things. One, it feels like we're jumping through a lot of hoops to not give any charity to CNN's take. And second, it bothers me that people seem to care more about CNN making a flippant comment, I understand. If you thought CNN is lying, I understand why you focus on it. But if we focus on it as a flippant comment, I don't understand why people hate that more than Joe Rogan's pissy attitude and being upset that they made that fucking flippant comment.
No,
and then start weaponizing that.
We hate Joe Rogan more, but the thing is, we can control what we say on our side.
Wasn't this like in the byline at the bottom of the screen too, like sitting there the whole time? Like,
apparently I missed this segment. I saw like the little clip of them showing his Instagram story and then like making some commentary, but I miss, I guess, a panel where they go back and forth on this.
It was like a 3-minute video that we watched and it wasn't until the very end that they brought in another lady and she finally said like, this is actually a drug that's been prescribed to like hundreds of millions of people. It's well known for this.
But why isn't Joe Rogan talking about that? And it's like, well, at least we had someone come in and fucking correct the record. Like,
because even when I watched it, I was I said that I think my final ruling was that this video was as close as you could get to a flat out lie without being there. It was that close. We can watch the whole video if you want. Actually, fuck it. Somebody link it. Somebody link the CNN.
Yeah,
Link it. We'll watch it.
Oh, and by the way, fuckers, like, if you ever wanted to fucking make your Joe Rogan liking Sims over him for nothing comments, they're dead now. They're fucking done.
No, you've been on his dick for too many years for that to happen so quickly, my friend.
It was actually only 1 year. All of 2018, I watched like all his fucking things.
Yeah, but you kept defending him till.
Hey, Tabor, why don't you calm down?
What? Hey, I'm trying to dispel this rumor that I hate women. Okay, hate Lycan too. I'm kidding.
Adriana's gone and she's never coming back because of you, Tabor. Thanks.
That's a flat out lie, and you know it.
Link the video. Who has it?
Not I, said the fly.
Okay, never mind. I got it from CNN. Okay, we're watching this on my stream. Good luck.
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID.
Joe Rogan announces he has COVID, praises horse dewormer ivermectin. That's the little title for this thing, but okay.
Rogan has said young, healthy people don't need to get vaccinated. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has taken several therapeutics to recover.
I don't need to watch the video.
Turns out I got
They
COVID.
fucked up. God damn it.
Wait, did you never watch the original video? What do you think?
No, pause it. So
no, wait, no, wait, no, wait. You're gonna watch the whole thing now. You're gonna watch the whole thing now. I'll top 1.5 it. Okay, here we go.
So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses. CDC says there's no evidence it works on COVID. Its increased usage has only led to a substantial increase in overdoses after a push by some on the far right seeking vaccine misinformation. Perspective now from our chief media correspondent and anchor of CNN's Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter, and Dr. Lena Wen, CNN medical analyst and former Baltimore Health Commissioner. Brian, this is obviously someone who has said on his podcast that healthy young people probably don't need to get vaccinations. What's he saying about his condition?
Yeah, and he is one of the most influential figures in all of media, especially among young men. He has a podcasting deal with Spotify worth $100 million, but in the past he has downplayed the vaccine. And in this case, he seems to have admitted he has COVID because it's hurting him in the pocketbook. He had to postpone or reschedule one of his upcoming stage shows. So you'd think the economic consequences might get people's attention and make people think, make his fans think differently about the threat of COVID. But he's trying to portray this as if he is feeling better now. He's doing better now because of this cocktail of drugs and medications that he has taken. Of course, some of these are under emergency use authorizations. Others have been, discouraged by the CDC and the FDA. But when you have a horse deworming medication that's discouraged by the government, that actually causes some people in this crazed environment we're in to actually want to try it. That's the upside down where we're in with figures like Joe Rogan.
So, Dr. Wen, ivermectin, apparently given to deworm animals, why are people using this? I mean, I know, it's being spread online and stuff, but what is the theory that it works?
So it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds into this video before this lady on the right, thank God, and this is the only reason why I said this whole video wasn't a flat out lie, is because this lady on the right actually knows what she's talking about. But up to this point, if you've been watching this, in your mind, Joe Rogan is literally eating fucking horse paste like a dumb fuck.
Hold on. Yes, but then so far, I've already, I'll talk about my concession at the end of this video, but overall, still, again, aside from the horse deworm comments, they're still saying the whole CDC is not fucking recommended this for anything. Nothing's been proved.
Fucking byline at the bottom that's sitting there the entire fucking
here's
thing.
what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do, okay? This is basic human shit. I want you to go find a girlfriend, okay? And then when you're dating her, I want you to lie every single time where you go every night, but I want you to be half true with everything you say, and I want you to see how long she trusts you for. That's what I want you to do.
Similar.
That is the exact same thing. You're saying, well, they were right about that thing, and they exaggerated or lied about that thing. They were right about that. You can't do that.
No, this is me saying I'm going to see a fucking rom-com and it's a James Bond movie. That's the extent of what this actually fucking means. And as far as consequential fucking whatever.
It's like saying I'm going to go see James Bond with 3 or 4 guy friends and instead you go with 1 girl. That's the equivalent of it. Yes.
No.
That's the equivalent of it.
Finish the video.
Okay, we're watching.
You could get away with that a couple times, but
you can't. You get away with that 1 or 2 times tops, and then your relationship is toast. That's what you get. Okay, hold on.
Well, I think there are some people who want to believe that there is a magic pill for COVID.
Now that you're watching it,
do you think what?
Lycan, do you think it was a joke? You were mentioning about jokes.
Hold on. Wait. 2 minutes, we'll finish it, and then he can answer. Although we already know the answer, but yeah, one second.
Theory that it works.
Well, I think there are some people who want to believe that there is a magic pill for COVID, which of course we would all want. But this is the main issue. So with ivermectin, not only is it that we know, not only are we saying that there's no evidence it works, it goes beyond that. We actually know that it doesn't work. There was a systematic review looking at 10 randomized controlled trials that have been done, that were done in different countries, looking at different doses of ivermectin, and they found that there was no benefit for ivermectin in reducing mortality, death to COVID-19, no reduction in symptoms or duration of symptoms for COVID-19, so it does not work. And so when everything is risk and there is no benefit, then this is not something that should be done. And I think the greater harm here is that it provides this false reassurance. People are now going about not getting vaccinated, saying that they can do whatever they want with the understanding that there is this magic pill to save them at the end of the day, except that it's not a magic pill that actually works.
And then real quick, so 3 minutes and 20 seconds, she still hasn't explained why people would think it would work, number one. And number two, saying that we know it doesn't work is something you should probably almost never say unless you have a mountain of evidence. 1 year or 6 months and no good RCTs yet to try to say like, oh, we know that it doesn't work. How fucking stupid would you look if eventually it came out, oh, actually it is partially effective, or it is effective with like a regimen of like other drugs or whatever. You'd look like a fucking moron. Even her statements are too strong now in retrospect, but all right, 30 seconds.
Downsides of taking it?
Well, every medication has side effects. And in this case, especially because people are using doses that are totally inappropriate. I mean, ivermectin is used in humans for things like parasites and scabies, but those are at low doses. When people are taking them in the very high doses as given for livestock, for horses, for example, then they could get nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, severe skin rash, extremely low blood pressure, and permanent liver damage. You could also die from overdoses of ivermectin. And I hope that people realize this and heed the advice of public health experts rather than Joe Rogan.
Dr. Lena Wan, Brian Salter, appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first thing, can you rekey Cake's API keys?
I already did it.
Okay. Second thing, I don't like that, and I think that was wrong. But let me get the full thought out before I get fucking bombarded.
Okay.
Iron deposit depleted.
I don't think that they came in hotter than I thought they did. Like I thought it was someone saying Joe's taking horse dewormer, like a normal talking head would. I didn't realize they fucking led with it, and they went a little harder than they went too hard. They shouldn't have gone as hard into like the horse dewormer shit, because they did it in a way that was far more they leaned into it too much. But when I say leaned into it, that makes it sounds like I'm leeway, and I'm not.
Okay.
But let's now turn it to a vacuum. Overall, the byline said horse dewormer. The fat dude on the left said horse dewormer. Anderson Cooper said horse dewormer. But after each of those comments was made a very reasonable, valid point about how this is ineffective. So again, in a vacuum, can we fucking point to anyone that walks away from this focusing on Joe Rogan horse dewormer lie as missing the fucking plot? Can we at least say that?
I think I would argue that probably 90% of the people that watched that came away with that take. That's why it's such a...
Oh, can we? Okay, then no. 90% of the people are fucking stupid and have no critical thinking skills.
Of course, everybody just flips the fucking news on while they're like getting ready for work, and they just see the byline, and they shake their fucking head, and then they mute it, and they let it roll, and they just make their coffee and shit, and then they go to work and they go about their day, and they don't listen to the rest of the fucking segment.
True. I fucking hate everyone. I hate you all. Everyone who fucking operates that way. Fuck you.
Okay, but we all operate that way too. We don't research and read into every single fucking thing that we say.
Why is it that the one time?
Not everything, but goddamn, when someone says horse dewormer, I don't know. I don't fucking know. And like the idea that like the only people to me that walk away from that just focusing on the horse dewormer thing are the people that either that want ivermectin to be real or fucking hate mainstream media.
Okay, but here's the thing, like even if you don't like the fact that people operate this way,
you're
as
right.
a news organization, you
anyway.
should know that they do. Yeah, you should know that they do, and you shouldn't.
You're not
keep
wrong.
That in mind when making
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I'm unnecessarily triggered. Yes. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's I guess we've resolved this on my end. You can continue.
Okay, cool.
Nice try.
Who was the person who was talking about the aspiration?
That was me.
Okay. So real quick, the issue is not just that every study that we've done shows that it's extremely rare, if not non-existent. There's one study that was gone over just now on stream where there were over 300 trials, not a single one aspirated blood. There are other reports where They asked nurses who regularly aspirate if they've ever seen an aspiration. I think only 12% ever reported seeing it like once or twice in their career or something like that. The issue is more about anatomy. The recommended injection sites, and I could send you literature on this if you want, they're capillary rich, but they're devoid of major blood vessels. So if you are injecting in the appropriate site for the deltoid, you should not be injecting into a major vessel. If you are injecting into a major vessel, you fucked up the site, which is not easy. Which is hard to fuck up. You'd have to actually like really be trying to fuck it up. That's the main issue. And so capillaries are very small arteries. Vessels. They connect the arterial system to the venous system, to the arterioles and venules, and they have a diameter that's far smaller than the diameter of the needle itself. So the issue is, so first of all, if you're injecting in the right site, you shouldn't be getting a major blood vessel. And if you do aspirate, you can traumatize the capillaries, which may increase your risk of getting leakage when you do actually do the injection after. So the point here is that if you inadvertently are in the wrong site, will you prevent a vessel injection? Maybe once in 100,000 or something. Maybe you will, but A, that's more easily corrected by getting the site right, and B, you have to counterbalance that policy with all of the problems you're speculating on. You can speculate on the other side of the coin. You could increase your risk of routine injection into a vessel by traumatizing the capillaries if you're aspirating, because aspiration is recommended for, it's not just like a quick aspiration. You have to hold it there for, I think, around 10 seconds or so. You can move the needle around while you're doing that. It increases a whole lot of things that can traumatize the vessels. So you'd also have to factor on the other side of the coin. Yeah, you may save a few, but you may also just start killing a lot more, or not killing, but like increasing your risk of intravascular injections more so than you're saving. The policy has been reviewed many times. It doesn't, every time that it's been reviewed, to my knowledge, there has never been a case where, at least in the United States that I'm aware of, that they've actually, in recent times, that they've actually recommended it. And every recommended time they have put a recommendation, they've recommended against aspiration.
Yeah, so I was just bringing that up in reference to, like, I don't know, I guess other issues that could be, or other, like, things that could be causing adverse side effects from the vaccine or something. And then the video was like, I don't know, doctors discussing it and then saying that that was supposed to be a good thing or something. So
yeah, I'm familiar with...
I don't claim to be an expert on that stuff, so...
Yeah, I'll just tell you.
A CMA and a phlebotomy certification. That's it. Okay. I don't know shit about.
I'll just tell you that. Yeah, I'm familiar with Campbell. He's.
I feel like I've outpaced him.
I wouldn't recommend him. He is one of those individuals who are between, from the videos I've seen of him, who are between. You know that, like, the Dunning-Kruger kind of like curve, where it's like before you're like an actual expert, you get to like this really like he's around there where it's like he's smart enough to mislead a lot of people who don't know otherwise, and a lot of the things he says in his videos, but which sucks, because the things he said, a lot of people are going.
But do you think that's his intention? I don't watch a lot of his stuff.
I don't think
I watched some of his stuff on COVID, and I thought he was just trying to give like an objective like update on.
No. I don't think. I think I agree that's what he's trying to do. I'm just telling you the effect. Because I don't think, like, for example, he says that like certain data wasn't available, or so it's not defined when it in the Pfizer trial protocol. It clearly is. He just doesn't know how to open the protocol and read it and how it's defined. He's not familiar with how clinical trials are done. But he'll like say on his video like, oh, they just didn't provide it anywhere. It's undefinable, or make statements like that, and everyone will buy that because his audience doesn't know any better. I don't think he's purposely doing it. I just think his familiarity with the field and his level of education is just not up to par to be able to make the statements that he's making, and he's not willing to take any contenders to, as far as I'm aware of, who are familiar with the field, who are able to refute the things he's saying. So,
okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. I heard him talking about a lot of other things, and then I heard him talking about like the issues with the vaccinated, like the waning of like the vaccination, and like how long it you are protected for versus like the
we can talk about
getting the virus and stuff. And then he like made a point to like clarify that like, oh well, this is coming from an Israeli study that's not a peer reviewed paper and it's not like peer review. That means like it hasn't like passed these certain standards.
It's also
so I don't know. It's
also
trying to provide an objective coverage of this or something.
Yeah, that was also for one vaccine that that from data we're starting to see wanes more than other vaccines, and also the Israeli data does have some disanalogies to the U.S. data that don't necessarily extrapolate. Also, the waning, it depends on your outcome of choice. For infections, yes, but for serious infections, for hospitalizations, for death, not really. Like maybe a little bit, but it's holding strong. I'll also point out to you that Moderna has not waned nearly as much as Pfizer has. Even from all the preprints that you look at. The data from it ranges from 76 to over 80%, even for asymptomatic infections. For the Delta variant, by the way, for Moderna.
Also, for my understanding is the Moderna and the Pfizer are essentially the same type of vaccine, but the Moderna dose, I think, was like 2 times as big or something. And that's why I think that's the theory.
Slightly over 3 times.
Oh, 3 times. So they were 3 times larger than
ours. Yeah.
People are thinking that might be
Pfizer dose is 30. Yeah, Pfizer dose is 30 micrograms, and the Moderna dose is 100 micrograms. They're very similar, and this is the dose of the active ingredient. This isn't like looking at overall. Calculating the mass of the lipid nanoparticles. Yeah, it's the actual amount of like mRNA that's going to be transcribed into the virus. Yeah. So the one hypothesis is that it can be the dosage. Also, keep in mind that you are getting 2 shots, so it's really 60 micrograms versus 200 micrograms. Yeah. So that's one possibility. It maybe with more time Moderna will weigh more, maybe not. But I do think one thing I think you'll hear that we really should stop doing, and a lot of people on both sides or all sides really. You'll hear people talk about COVID vaccinations as the vaccine. Like no, like we shouldn't be talking about the vaccine. We should be talking about the specific vaccines because it's more and more clear that they're not equal. There are different. Yeah, there's difference in not just the risks, like for example, the rare risks.
But in like each one and their efficacy and everything.
Yeah, their efficacy is different. Moderna, I mean, at this point in my reading of the literature, if I had to recommend a vaccine, I would recommend Moderna. Like it's the most effective vaccine on the market, and the risk of myocarditis, even for the young age populations, is not any greater than the risk of not getting vaccinated. The risk of, even for 16 to 24, the risk is around 1 in 5,000, even for that young age group. And if you do get COVID, by the way, the risk for that age group is about 1 in 300. And if you consider the fact that young people are less likely to get COVID and just analyze their total risk, not just their conditional probability if they did get COVID, it's about 1 in 5,000, and the confidence intervals would overlap. So there really is no different. It's not something even for the young age group that would influence your decision to get vaccinated with Moderna versus not. Now, in terms of like vaccinating with another vaccine, you'd have to balance that out against against the potential for increased waning versus Moderna. Also, I want to point out that this is happening in men more so than women, and there are potential long-term side effects of getting COVID in men, specifically versus women. One that's new and upcoming in terms of the research being done, but is not talked about a lot, which is erectile dysfunction. So if you get COVID,
that happens if you wait. That happens if you get vaccinated or if you don't.
That's if you get COVID-19.
If you get COVID. Oh, yeah, if you get COVID. So the virons of COVID, they have tropism to the corpus callosum of the penis. And what they found was that both in mild cases and severe cases, 6 and 8 months after This all started 6 and 8 months after they recovered, and they've tested negative for a long time. They've gotten severe erectile dysfunction, and they had to get surgery. And they took the penile tissue from the corpus cavernosa, and they sectioned it, and they tested it actually for COVID. They looked under an electron microscopy. They saw it loaded with virons of COVID, and they did a PCR test, and they found that it was positive for COVID. So 8 months after they tested negative for COVID, their penis tested positive for SARS-CoV-2.
Wait.
And then they did, yeah.
What?
And then, and then after they did some there was other papers that followed up. They did epidemiologic work, and they looked at cases and control, so it's typical cross-sectional case control study. And they found, I believe it was around like an 18% absolute difference or so between.
I'm still stuck on their penises had COVID.
Yeah, their penises had. Okay,
like
so
it's
to be specific,
like it's a viral load is in your.
To be specific, the corpus cavernosa of the penis was loaded with SARS-CoV-2 virons 8 months after the initial infection. And that was shown on. So, why is a different question. So there are I know in the testes there's ACE2 receptors. I'm not sure of the expression of ACE2 receptors in the corpus cavernosa, but for whatever reason,
what is it called? I looked up corpus callosum.
Corpus cavernosa.
Wait, I'm sorry.
No, not corpus callosum. Corpus callosum it's the corpus cavernosa. It's the part of the penis that's responsible for erection, for getting engorged with blood when you get erect.
Also, to be clear too, those ACE2 receptors, those are found all over the body, right? I think those exist in high concentration in the heart as well.
In varying concentration. There are some in the heart. There are some in the testes. It may have to do with more than just ACE2. It could be ACE2 concentrations. It could also be like just the architecture of the corpus cavernosa with tortuous capillaries and whatnot. Who knows? But the point is, for whatever reason, why they found that it was there, and then the epidemiologic data does favor it as well. So they looked at a greater sample size. They took 100 patients with COVID and not COVID, and they found that there was not just a statistically significant difference, but it had a large effect size. It was like a large absolute percentage difference, like 18% rate in getting erectile dysfunction from not. And then you'll ask, okay, well, what about adjusting for confounders? Well, they adjusted for obesity, didn't make a difference. They adjusted for depression, didn't make a difference. They adjusted for anxiety, didn't make a difference. Adjusted for age, didn't make a difference. And then you could ask, okay, well, does this thing happen in different age groups? So there was another study that was done, and it broke it down between ages 20 and 40, ages 40 and 60, ages 60 and up. And they had them rate there on one of their on a standardized survey for that's right, your penis erection. And there across every age group studied, it drastically decreased from before getting COVID to after getting COVID. And so, to whatever degree, what I want to point out to the people pointing out myocarditis in young men, based on data that's often unadjusted, by the way, data that's preliminary, data that is new and upcoming, and they want to argue a precautionary principle. I want to point out that there's arguably stronger evidence for this side effect of COVID that's not talked about that much, and potentially a permanent side effect, because there's much more concrete mechanistic data for it. There's also better the data is actually confounder controlled in terms of the epidemiologic data, and I want them to also factor in the increased risk of potentially just having permanent damage to their child's penis if they don't get vaccinated.
Wait, but is that happening in children too? Like, do you know that? Like, wait.
So
okay,
it hasn't been studied. It's been
because I don't have anything
wrong. Studied.
Sorry, go
I'll
ahead.
answer your question. It hasn't been studied in children that I'm aware of. It's been broken down. The youngest age group that I'm aware of is the 20 to 40 range. But however, what I will tell you is, so far it's happened to 2040. It's also happened to 40-60. It's also happened to 60 and up. Can it happen to now? I think that's enough for a precautionary principle if you're 18, 19, or 16. Like, is it going to be, like, oh, now they're immune? Like, maybe, but fuck, like, I'm not taking that risk.
So, because I don't have, again, I don't really have necessarily issues very much with the vaccine anymore. Like I did for a little while. Like I was nervous. Like I didn't know shit about it. I tried to read as much as I could and understand all this shit. But I got my vaccine. Like I work in healthcare anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I would have to get the vaccine. I had to get all the flu updates too. But I that's what we were talking about earlier. Like I'm not really for the mandates. Like, do you think that they should be mandating it for schools for kids?
Okay, so that's going to be a prescriptive question. So the easy things I can address, so we can have that conversation. I just want to get through the descriptive claims first, because the easier things to address are going to be the descriptive claims, because I don't have to delve into any moral philosophy for that. I can just point to, okay, well, this is this, that is that. No, this is actually a false claim. So as a point of process, we can get into that, but I'd like.
I'm not really gonna push back on being vaccine hesitant. I think people should get the vaccine. I'm not really
No. But even being vaccine hesitant, But even vaccine hesitant is a prescriptive kind of issue. What I just want to do first is I just want to get all the facts on the ground that you may have issues with. Like we talked about the aspiration issue. We talked about. So these are all going to be descriptive things. One thing also you mentioned is natural immunity. I'd like to cover that as well. And then we can have once all of that's cleared up, have the conversation about, okay, well, do we mandate or not? Because it's just a lot easier to deal with the descriptive claims than the prescriptive ones. Is that fair?
Sure. Also, I'll go ahead and add one more thing to your list that you're going to run down, because something that I was going to bring up is who was responsible for spreading it to who. I saw. I'll try to find it, but I saw a study or a video that was linking to a study that was talking about that the children actually weren't responsible for spreading it to their parents, that it was actually the other way around, that the 30 to 50 age group actually spread it to kids, and that they were asymptomatic or whatever, and then now that's what they're concerned about, whether or not those kids are going to spread it to the grandparents or vice versa, whether the 30 to 50
kids can spread
it to their grandparents or whatever.
Yeah,
so
kids can spread. I mean, replication competent culture positive viruses have been isolated from children. It's not really much of a question whether children have the ability to spread the virus. Of course they do. Can people spread it to kids as well? Sure. Both scenarios are very plausible. So I wouldn't be surprised if, an adult spread it to a child or a child spread it to an adult. I'm just not sure what the issue is.
I guess, I don't know. I was just that would just be, you said you were going to run down a list, so I was just giving you
and the other
address, I guess.
I want to talk about, you mentioned natural immunity being superior to the vaccine. So that could very well be the case, especially for Pfizer. There were two studies. The best one was that I've seen was they were both comparing it to Pfizer, which again, I'll say, is not the most efficacious vaccine, although it's certainly better than no vaccine. The biggest issue with both of them is going to be survival bias. So what they're doing is they are taking individuals that have recovered from COVID and individuals who are vaccinated, and they are looking at the rate of infection, rate of COVID and breakthrough infections, breaking through from the natural immunity and breaking through from the vaccination. The issue with this is going to be the individuals who recovered from COVID compared to induces a survival bias that's stronger than the individuals who recovered from vaccination. Because especially if you have a significant portion of elderly people in your cohort, the rate of death from the vaccine is very low. The rate of death from the getting COVID is very high. And so what the individuals you're going to be left with who are going to make it into your study are going to be less sick overall in general. They're going to have, and that's actually what they found. They had less they had a lower rate of confounders. They had a lower rate of immunosuppression specifically. It was like 2.5 times more individuals that were immunosuppressed in the vaccine group compared to the natural immunity group. Now,
wait, does that explanation, say, okay, does that make sense, Nacho? Okay, so this is something real quick, just putting those into other words, because so that one YouTube channel we looked at, that guy had a study earlier that showed that natural immunity was more effective when it came to reinfection versus vaccination. But something that you have to worry about when it comes to people that are infected versus people that are vaccinated is, this is important because there was another study that came out of the UK showing that vaccinated people were dying more from COVID-19 than unvaccinated people. You have to be really concerned because of the uneven rollout of vaccinations to different age groups. So for instance, initially in the UK, for the really early data, initially it was only, I think it was like 60 and older were the ones getting the vaccine, and people younger than that weren't. So when you infect this population, even though the 60 and olders were vaccinated, they're still probably more likely to die because they're going to have more comorbidities, because they're older, they're naturally less likely to survive versus younger populations. Then a second thing you run into, and I didn't know, so this is just a question I had, Avi might have data on this, but a question that I had was when that guy was showing data for, look at how many people get reinfected with the coronavirus and have better outcomes than people that got vaccinated and get reinfected. Well, if you were infected one time and you survived, that's probably already putting you're already selecting for a certain type of people. Like, let's say, for instance, I take 1,000 people, 900 of them are morbidly obese and they're 95 years old, and 100 of them are young, healthy adults. Let's say that I infect all of them and 900 die, and then the 100 young, healthy people survive. Then due to that selection bias, when it comes time for reinfection of the actual virus, I would expect that reinfected population is going to do probably better than the vaccinated population because they're already going to be healthier. They're going to be less likely to be older people that were vaccinated. And you're already selecting for a group of people that survived one infection, so they're probably going to survive a second one. That's like a thing to keep in mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And there's a name for this. It's called survivorship bias. Mm-hmm. That's the type of selection bias is called survivorship bias. And that is the main problem with the natural immunity studies. Now, what specific confounders it could have all sorts of confounders, but one is immunosuppression. Now, I know someone watching this is going to push back and say, "Oh, but they adjusted for immunosuppression."
Intellectually,
these studies adjust for immunosuppression as a binary variable when it's really a continuous variable. It's hard to adjust for immunosuppression as a continuous variable, but it really should be adjusted that way. And the reason for that is if you have 2.5 times greater the percentage of individuals who are immunosuppressed in one group compared to the other, just adjusting for whether a group is immunosuppressed or not immunosuppressed is not going to be sufficient. And the reason is because the individuals on both sides who are immunosuppressed, you wouldn't expect the same degree of immunosuppression. If you just have this bell curve and you have a drastic difference at the tails of the bell curves, there's going to be a big difference. The degree of immunosuppression is going to be expected to be larger in the vaccinated group than the non-vaccinated group. So just adjusting for immunosuppression as a binary variable is not going to cut it. Not to mention all the other confounders that come along with survivorship bias. So that's the biggest issue with the natural immunity studies. Does that mean it's a completely garbage study? It doesn't mean it's completely garbage. It means it has like a pretty significant limitation. And also I'll point out that it's not testing it against, it's also not putting up natural immunity against the most efficacious COVID-19 vaccine. That's the other thing to keep in mind.
Oh, it's collectively against all vaccines, right?
Okay.
Well, it should be collective. I mean, it should. Well, it depends. It depends what your question you're asking. If you're
well, I was thinking in regards to the Israel data, that I'm guessing that was probably measured against all vaccines, not just one.
No. It was Pfizer.
Oh, that was just Pfizer.
It was Pfizer.
Okay.
Yeah, Pfizer is like the main vaccine that Israel is rolled out. If not, it's either the only one or the main one. I think I think it's the major one that overwhelming majority of the Israeli population are using is Pfizer. Mm-hmm. And so they were both natural immunity studies. Both of those preprints in Pfizer were against. Both of those preprints in Israel were against the Pfizer vaccine. I'd love to see. I've yet to see natural immunity compared to Moderna. I'd love to see that kind of data. But yeah. Any other things you want to throw out in terms of descriptive claims?
There was something there was something that same guy was talking about. They were talking about that specifically about the natural immunity versus the vaccinated immunity, and saying that that antigens weren't really something they were looking at, and that you're supposed to look at memory T cells or memory B cells or whatever the fuck. Do you know anything about that?
No, that's fine. But this doesn't. I'm not sure.
General question. I don't know if it like relates to anything, but it was something that when it was brought up, I was like, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about anymore.
Yeah, the issue is that we don't just use antibodies for our immune system. There's cellular immunity as well, which is that you have immune cells that can attack cells infected with viruses, and that's important for especially viral infections. So, a lot of people will try to make statements about immunity. How much immunity do you have? And they'll like, well, what's your antibody level or something like that? And that's not really a good way of measuring immunity. It's certainly not a good way of evaluating if natural immunity gives more or less immunity compared to a vaccine group. And also cellular assays aren't really that best either. These are all proxies for outcomes that you need. What you really want to do is you want to have a cohort follow the cohort and adjust for the relevant confounders appropriately and look at the outcomes, because the outcomes subsume all the mechanistic speculation.
Okay, wait, did that make sense?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, more so than whenever that guy just like skimmed over it.
Yeah. Okay, so the real quick like layman's version to this, which is the only version I understand, is when you get sick, you have little things that float around your body called antibodies, and these things are what specifically target and kill, or at least mark for killing, or like inhibit the reproductive effects, et cetera, of like viral cells or like bacteria, or whatever.
Right. But I knew about the
but those things, whenever somebody talks about how immune are you, they always say like, oh, what's your antibody count? What's your antibody count? But the problem is that like that's not like your immune system would suck if it just needed billions and trillions of antibodies constantly floating around your body in order to counter infections, because you can't have that many all the time. So what happens is you have these other cells. You've got memory cells, you've got CD4 cells, and what all these things do basically is the goal is when you get reinfected, are these cells able to recognize a specific pathogen and then not instigate. There's a word I'm looking for, but basically cause your cells to recreate more of those antibodies, and those are the markers.
Start the whole process all over again.
Those are the markers that you're looking for. So anytime somebody's like, "Oh, you have like low antibodies versus you have no immunity," that's absolutely not true. There are other ways to measure immunity, and there's a second thing that Abby said that nobody understands that's actually so fucking important. Okay, mechanisms are never an adequate explanation for like what will happen in a population. So for instance, you might be able to show that a drug has this mechanism or that a disease has this mechanism, but in order to be able to say it will help this many people or hurt this many people, you have to do a study following a particular cohort, following and seeing what happens with these people, because mechanisms are incredibly fucking complicated. So for instance, you might be able to show that like, hey, when you take this drug, it makes it so that this particular virus has a hard time reproducing. And that might be true, but when you go to actually study it in people, maybe it's the case that your average time of recovery is still the exact same. So you can't just say because you have a mechanism and you say, oh, well, the mechanism does this. That doesn't mean you can just say, oh, well, this will help the disease. You have to actually do a larger study to prove the therapeutic effect. You can't jump from A to B. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. If you think about it, like the amount of mechanisms that go into a given question are like virtually infinite. And the outcome, that's why we look at outcomes, because the outcomes contain all the mechanisms. You're looking at everything that's subsumed. It subsumes all of it. If we could, have a supercomputer to calculate at the molecular level for every question we would need an answer to, sure, by all means, but we're not there. That's why we need the outcomes. And if the outcomes contradict the mechanisms and the outcomes-based data is done well, then either your mechanism is just wrong or you're missing other mechanisms that countervail it or something like that.
Right. So, so could we go to the what do you think about like mandating for like children in schools and stuff?
Yeah, so I mean that's going to be a normative question, and that's going to depend on your values. So it's going to depend on. So if you're a consequentialist, I can see utilitarian specifically, I can see a very good case for the mandates. I think that they would reduce suffering. I think I would think they would reduce far more suffering than they would cause. If you have a rights-based approach ethic, then it would depend on whether you consider these mandates to be some sort of rights violation, and whether you consider the prevention of suffering if that would outscale the rights violations, if you do consider those things to be outscalable. So that it would depend on what normative framework you're working with.
I guess
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess the way I'm looking at it for me, like, is more that like this, they aren't like children aren't being as affected by this virus, and it seems like we've never mandated, like we do mandate other vaccines like for schooling and stuff like that, but it's like we had how many different flu strains whenever all of us were in school. Like I'm 28, like I think almost the same age as Destiny. Like there were so many different like flu strains that came out, and I don't think I got maybe like one or two, and it wasn't because like we're like my family's like anti-vax or something like that. It's just like we just forget. Like there's like 8 kids in my family. And like I had a single mom. So it was like she just wasn't when we're just getting to school and back. Like but so like it wasn't. I know that it's not exactly the same as the flu, and I know it's different. I know it evolves differently, but like the death rate and like the severity of it is really close. So I don't.
Well, wait. Well, hold on. When you say children are not affected by the virus, there are
not in the same way that like obviously it's got a target like a target population. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the effects of the virus tend to be more severe with the elderly, of course. But the question here is going to be well, a couple of things. So first of all, you should know that there are questions regarding children that we haven't answered that plausibly can affect them in severe ways. We just mentioned one of them, by the way.
Right.
We don't know the answer to whether you're gonna have your child have permanent erectile dysfunction or long-term erectile dysfunction. This just hasn't been studied. It's been studied in every other age group.
We also don't know what the like effects are from like, and when I'm talking about like children, I'm talking about like elementary to like middle school, maybe like freshman high school, like the youngest possible. Sure. That I don't think is FDA approved yet, or like I don't think, and I think they were halting it in other countries for certain ages. I don't remember what the age range was.
For myocarditis, I can address that.
Yeah.
But if the response to that is saying, well, we don't know the long-term effects of the vaccine, I shouldn't say the vaccine, from vaccines. The response there is going to be, well, the disanalogy there is I'm giving you a reason to believe there may be a effect that could plausibly be there. I'm not just speculating something with no reason at all. As far as and something like that is going to take precedence over just randomly making something up or just saying like, well, there could be anything. Because I'm just going to be based. If that's the type of speculation that we're talking about, that's going to be superseded by saying, okay, well, actually, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. I'm saying, look, every age group otherwise has had this. We've analyzed it through, 60 and up. We've analyzed it through 40 to 60. We've analyzed it at 20 and 40. They're all showing the same thing. That increases my credence toward it plausibly being there in children. That's very different than if I didn't have that data and just saying, well, maybe this can happen. Maybe erectile dysfunction can happen in children. You see the difference between those two types of speculations? Okay, so that's one disanalogy. The other, so we have more of a reason to believe this than just something that we're not seeing anymore. The other thing in terms of the Nordic countries that I believe you're referring to, in terms of Moderna specifically, that they've halted it for.
They like started it and then they stopped it or something, I think.
Yeah. Now what I will tell you is that I think I disagree with that. I think it's actually crazy, and most countries that offer Moderna have not done that. And the reason specifically is just the fact that if you run the numbers, the myocarditis rates are a wash if you get vaccinated versus not vaccinated. The reason is again, the rate was about 1 in 5,000 for young individuals.
Wait, you think it's crazy that they halted it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think that I do think that's crazy, and I'll tell you why. Because I'll go through their reasoning. So yeah, they halted it for age groups of 16, I believe to 30. I believe to 30, and after 30 you can get it. If you look at the data from 16 to 24, the rates of getting COVID, the rates of myocarditis from COVID. Myocarditis, by the way, is an inflammation of the heart. The rates are around 1 in 5,000 for that age group. That's the signal they saw that had them halt the Moderna vaccine. The rate, I'll point out to you that the rate of getting myocarditis from COVID, not the vaccine, but COVID itself, is 1 in 300. Right? It's over 10 times greater than that. Now, and if you want to factor in the probability, the decreased rate of young people getting COVID in the first place, the whole thing comes out to be a wash. It's about 1 in 6,000 with overlapping confidence intervals. So myocarditis should not be a reason to get or refuse the vaccine. It's not something, even for that age group, it's not something that should factor in either way. And if one wants to say the probability is to push higher for the male sex specifically, then I'm going to invoke the same precautions on the other end about erectile dysfunction, which is also just a thing for male specifically. So all the data that I've seen shows that if you actually run the numbers, it's just that concern is a wash.
But then what would be? So then I guess. So then what would be?
Wait, let me just say one more thing. They've also banned it for. Yeah, the rates were higher among males in the 16 to 24 age range, but they are not allowing 26, 27, 28, 29-year-old females to get it, right? They've cut it off at 30. Now that's ridiculous, right? Females have a much lower rate of myocarditis from these vaccinations, and over 20. If you're over 24, you also have a much lower rate compared to if you're under 24. That looks. So I disagree with the first part, but the second part of not letting 28-year-old females get it, that's just insane to me.
Yeah, I don't know about all those little like nuance. I didn't even know that about like the 28-year-old, 28-year-old females. So I guess what would your like main reason that you think that that kids should be vaccinated? Because I would be like. Their immune systems are much stronger and much more capable than like everybody else, and that it doesn't seem to like be as much of a risk to children than everybody else, the larger population.
Yeah, so the reasons are severalfold. So number one, the precaution for risks to the young individuals themselves. We've went over one of them. So definitely for male children, there is a potential plausible risk that is could be long-term, if not permanent. So that has not been ruled out, and there are good reasons to think that it should plausibly be could plausibly be. The other reasons for children getting vaccinated is prevention of spreading to other individuals, because children can spread the virus, and there is strong data showing that vaccination prevents transmission. Those are the main two. Yeah, so the main two reasons, not surprisingly, is number one, protection to self, number two, protection to others.
But if all the parents and all of the like elderly population are getting vaccinated, like I don't.
No, you can still spread it. You can still spread it if you're okay. So we have.
You can still get it with even with the vaccine, but.
Well, but it makes it.
You're less likely to get hospitalized and have like severe complications, right?
But you're even less likely if both the index case and the contact case are vaccinated. So you can have 4 different possibilities, right? So by index case, I just mean the individual who has the infection. And by contact, I mean the individual who has acquired the infection from the index. Now, there's 4 possibilities. You can have both the index case and the contact case be unvaccinated. You can have both be vaccinated. You can have the index case vaccinated, the contact case unvaccinated, and then the index case unvaccinated, the contact case vaccinated. The lowest probability of transmission is when they're both vaccinated. Any other combination results in a higher rate of transmission. And that's the reason.
You don't. Okay, but then that's just why they should get. So, do you think that it's okay, like for the government to mandate that though, or you just think that they should.
So again, so that's going to be.
That's been my only main contention too. Like I was much more hesitant, like when children, but just generally speaking, like
the problem is that like if you're,
I was telling him earlier, like I've got my vaccination, like I work in healthcare, it doesn't really bother me, but like I just feel like
the problem is that if you appeal to his
stuff.
like profession, right, as a doctor, all he can tell you are like here's the risks, here's whatever, but when it comes to making the actual decision of what should you do, that's the answers to that are a little bit outside of like a scientific question, because some people some people will say
curious.
like we could all die, but as long as our rights to like bodily autonomy are protected, that's an okay gamble to take. And other people would say, fuck your bodily autonomy, like we need to do what we can to protect each other or whatever. So, but those questions all are kind of like outside the bounds of like a scientific discussion.
Yeah, it's more like moral questions or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly. So again, I mean, and that conversation can be had, but my answers are just going to be additional on what normative system you're operating. I can say, like, if you're a utilitarian, this is probably what makes most sense. If you're a deontologist and these are your specific deontic rules, this is probably what makes most sense. If you're a P equals U plus D-er, this is probably what makes most sense. I'm just kidding.
For me, it seems like it doesn't, and I don't know how, like, I don't know what the threshold is, but it seems to me like it doesn't cross, like, the threshold of being, like, it's such a severe case that it should be, like, mandated. Like, if I don't know, like, if, like, 5% of people were dying or 10%, like, I don't know what number it is, but, like, it doesn't seem, it seems like it's not dangerous.
Well, wait a minute, why do you...
does that make sense? Like,
sure. No, I understand what you're trying to say. So I just want to point out one thing. Like, here's one thing I want to point out in this analysis. It seems like when you're looking at the benefits of vaccines, you seem to be just going straight to death. But when you're looking at the risks of vaccines, you seem to be including a lot of things. Like you're pointing out myocarditis. You're talking about all the the risks of injection into veins. You're talking about so what I would encourage you to do is not just limit the benefits of vaccines to a death metric. I would include morbidity metrics as well. Or what you can do is you can just, if you only care about death for whatever reason, and you don't care about suffering, then only consider death for the risks as well. So, but what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to only look at death for the benefits of vaccination and look at death and all the other risks under the sun for vaccination when looking at the risk benefit
or forgetting it when being unvaccinated. Yeah, I get what you're saying. So like, I know that there's other like risk factors for like or other complications that you can have getting it. I know there's been like athletes who have got it and they say like, oh well, they have like what are they, there's like a name they started calling it, like long COVID or whatever they called it. Like basically you like always have like shortness of breath and whatever, like you're basically not this. I know it was happening in athletes a lot. We're like talking about it publicly and saying that like they didn't feel the same after, and they didn't have the same like capacity and endurance after and stuff like that. But I mean, aren't these kind of things also happening with other, like with the flu and other viruses that we don't mandate vaccines for too? It's just not to the same
this is true. Something that I want to back up
percentage.
Something to back up real quick to keep in mind, and nobody does this, and unfortunately we can't run reality 2 or 3 or 4 times, see how things look out. Something that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that with our current preventative measures, I think we've almost like completely eliminated the flu season this year in the United States, or last year. Like the reduction in flu cases was astronomical. I think it was over 95%, if I'm correct. If that is the case, and we still saw hundreds of thousands of people die of the coronavirus, like the idea of just going back to normal and forgetting it, like this seems to be such an unbelievably infectious thing, but we just don't know how much it is because our norm is like, this is how many people it infects when all of society is locked down, we're all wearing masks, we're all social distancing, and travel is like banned for half the year. So like, I think that the potential for it to be much worse, like even without a mutation or whatever, it still exists. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to have to do so. It's going to be a complicated risk-benefit analysis. But the point here is that I think that at the end of the day, that there are so many cases of this this causing so much suffering, not just death, of this virus causing so much suffering. It's causing not just it's not just limited to like a medical thing. It's because it's around and causing so much suffering. It's causing economic devastation. It's causing like policies to change. It's causing people to have to go through all sorts of extra regulations and and hoops to jump through. It's just impacting the world. It's changed the world. And if you can get rid of a lot of that, if you can mitigate it, and you have just a bunch of people who are just being dumb fucks and they're just being like, well, no, I'm not going to get the vaccine because I believe what Joe Rogan said or something like that, or Brett Weinstein or whatnot, or Malone. At some point, if they're really causing people to get the infection and they're really causing them to suffer, then as part of society, I don't see I personally don't see it being unreasonable to say, you know what, fuck you guys, you're getting the vaccine if you want to be part of our society, or else you're just not going to be able to participate in these societal functions. Have fun. But that's going to depend on your norms.
Yeah, that's what I just have issue with that. I guess that's where my more like libertarian side comes out. I just feel like people should have a choice in it. Like,
well, let me ask you.
I get that it's a risk to everyone, but
it's not just a risk. It's a risk that's easily mitigatable with very little risk in the mitigation strategy. Like, it's a risk that's very easily decreased with very little risk to that strategy of mitigation. Let me just ask you this. Let's say let's just say smallpox. We lived in an era where smallpox only infected the elderly, right? Would you support like making the smallpox, or like polio, like if polio only affected the elderly, or all these vaccinations that we mandate for children? Would you support? And let's just say that children could spread it, and we were living in a world where those viruses existed and were prevalent. Would you now say that since children aren't infected with them, although they can transmit it, but since they're not infected with them, there's very low risk to the child, we should like lift all of those mandates for MMR, for polio. Would you say that we shouldn't be mandating those vaccines anymore for children?
I don't know. It would be. I don't think so. I think those are. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like those are much more severe.
So then, what's the difference?
In that, I guess.
Well, no. Actually, I don't know. Well, wait a minute. Well, they have. Well, okay. So yes.
I don't know enough about them to really like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me just ask you this. Let's just say. Let's just say that. Well, okay. So really quick, the chance of dying if you get infected with COVID is lower than some of those other pathogens I mentioned. However, because they spread so much more, the total amount of deaths are actually fairly large. And worldwide, yeah. So if worldwide, including the United States, I believe, if you compared like the yearly deaths of COVID to something like when smallpox was a thing, the yearly deaths are not that far off. And it's not because COVID is more deadly per disease. It's just spreading so much more that even if there's a small chance of death, it's spreading, getting so many more cases that.
Sorry.
It's getting more cases that result in these deaths. So let me just ask you that: if smallpox was here today, and if smallpox, just the infectiousness of smallpox increased dramatically, and the infection fatality rate, the chance of dying if you were infected, matched COVID, and children can spread it to adults, and children could not be killed with the smallpox. However, there may be some unknown long-term side effects that we have reason to believe may be the case in children. Would you then support lifting the mandates to go to school for vaccination for children for smallpox or polio or something?
I don't know, man. I don't think so.
Okay, but now you have an issue. Right?
Yeah, I know.
So if you're going to be agnostic on that, right, there's an inconsistency here. If you're going to be agnostic on that, but against the COVID mandate, then there's got to be some sort of difference, presumably, other than just the name of the vaccine or just the virus implicator. There's got to be some sort of difference.
I mean, I've already had that impressed in my head that like what smallpox is too. So like,
yeah. So there's gonna but the thing is, like, I've already equalized those disanalogies, and you're now saying that you're not sure if you're hesitant. I can see I can hear the hesitancy in your voice of lifting those mandates. But when it comes to the same infection fatality ratio and the same risk for children, the same risk for adults, I just changed the name. All of a sudden, like you're against. You're like, no, I'm not okay with this mandate. But why?
Man, that's I don't know. I'd have to do some internal digging, I guess. It just seems you provided me with a lot of information to think about. Okay, I gotta be honest. I need to do some more digging into this. I thought I had a fair amount, enough to make a decision like that, or to think about it in that way. I mean, I got like myself vaccinated and stuff, but yeah, I've been pretty strongly like, I think people should have a choice or a decision to like get vaccinated or not get vaccinated.
Nacho, can I ask you?
Just not when it comes to all the other vaccines.
No, not. I don't know, man.
We're going to the same problem now. Like,
yeah, I know. I know that we already have and we already mandate a lot of vaccines, and I know that it's part of. I know that it's in. What is it, like the 10th Amendment or some shit, or like? I know that it's.
There was a Supreme Court case.
There's precedent already for this. So
there's a precedent in Supreme Court case for mandating vaccines. But the point, regardless, that's not the main. The point is that it's not that you just have this belief that everyone should have the choice, because you don't have that belief.
Yeah, not
for these
entirely.
Other vaccines.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you're very hesitant to say, oh, you should just have the rights. Like, no, you don't want to lift those mandates.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know where this. I don't know what exactly maybe all the qualifiers are, because, and maybe
I'm dialing the qualifiers.
I focus more on like the death rate, because that's an easier one to.
I already dialed that in. Right?
I know. I'm just saying, like, I'm thinking about this on the fly, so I'm trying to walk you through my.
No, it's fine. Listen, if you want to take some time to, So here's the ultimate issue. The issue is I see an inconsistency in your position. The inconsistency is you seem to be hesitant to have a choice in vaccination for a given set of vaccines. You don't seem hesitant to have choice. You strongly support it for these specific, not the vaccine, but these specific COVID vaccines. And when you are offering these differences to account for that difference in your prescriptions, when I equalize them, you are not changing your prescriptions to match what you're offering. So either you have three options here. You can either say, well, I support freedom across the board. I want to lift all the vaccines. I just choose whatever, whether it's measles, mumps, rubella, polio, whatever, diphtheria, I don't care. Or you can say, mandate all the ones I listed, or you can provide a difference that I already haven't equalized. And then you'd come to, those are the three avenues I see to come to a consistent position. You can think about it if you want. You don't have to answer now.
I don't know if I can answer right now. I can just tell you that I don't know, man.
Nacho, can I ask?
I mean, technically,
I think
you can, but that's going to be ridiculous. Okay.
I think you're pilling me. Okay, I've got a lot to think about.
Nacho, I have a question. I have this because yesterday or the day before, when Colin Powell died, I had some feelings about it, and there's people who disagreed, and someone linked an article, and as I'm reading it, like, I found myself in a moment where there's this desire to just kind of reject and stop reading. And it was like, nah, fuck, this isn't true, right? But I had to like push myself to further validate whether or not what I was reading actually countered what I believed, and to research it beyond the article and whatnot. And, just to find out whether or not I actually believed it. So what I'm curious is, when someone else is presented with something that counters their gut feeling or their beliefs or whatever, I'm curious if you're feeling that, if you can pinpoint it, if you can kind of like, I guess, talk to what's really sticking in your craw.
Are you just talking about like a cognitive dissonance in general, or are you talking about?
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. I try to avoid the words just because they get memed on. But yeah, like that cognitive dissonance.
One thing,
do you feel it sticking? Can you kind of point to it and say what exactly it is?
I don't really know. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like I have a lot to think about because I'm not really sure. Like, still where I would be getting hung up. I guess. I mean, I feel like I do as much reading as I possibly can. Like, I don't do like I do streaming as like a side hobby. So it's not something that I do like full time, like Destiny, where I can like literally just like research shit all day if I really want to or something like that. Right. I'm like working like 80 hours a week. So, but I listen to a lot of like audiobooks and shit, and I read as much articles and stuff as I can. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess I got some more digging to do on this one. But
yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, you can hit me up if you want.
Thank you for the information though. So
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, if you can send me like whatever, like you cited like a lot of like, and sources and stuff. Like, if you want to send me like any of that stuff, you can.
Yeah, I'll link you to my Discord. I have like an archive of like all the studies I use for like across like a whole bunch of different topics, and they're all stored into like an organized Discord server.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'd link Destiny too, but he still has me blocked.
Wait, on Twitter or what?
On Discord.
Why does he have you blocked?
Because I'm an infinity debater.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I just tried linking again. He still has. Yeah. All right. Well, let me link that to you. Hold on.
Okay, what's up? What happened?
All right, there you go.
Destiny, why do you have Homeboy blocked?
What, I have who blocked?
Ivy, apparently.
On what?
Oh, I tried to send him a link to the... Yeah, go. Oh, yeah, the joke was that he was coming around and I was sending him the link to all the studies, like a Discord server where I organize all the studies, and I was like, I would send just Destiny the link as well, but he still had me blocked.
Okay, I unblocked you, buddy.
There you go. All right, cool. All right, well, yeah, like I'm happy to follow up if you have any other questions about any of the data we talked about. And and look, one thing is, thank you for your intellectual honesty and like admitting that you didn't have an answer, you need more to think about it. So a lot of people like dig their heels in on this kind of stuff. So yeah, I appreciate the intellectual honesty.
I'm not